and welcome to the Leadership Forum live stream. Hope you guys are having a great week. If you're in the US, hope you had a fun and restful Labor Day weekend. And if not, hope you're enjoying the week regardless, and that you are taking some time for yourself, because that is so important to do. I'm going to add Jesse in here. And today we're talking about one of our favorite topics. Hey, Jesse.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm crooked. Hold on.
Are you crooked? So I was just saying we're
crooked.
talking about one of our very favorite topics today, introversion. And in fact, it's such a favorite topic that you've actually written a book about it, right?
I have, yes. My previous life as a teacher, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of conversation around introversion in the classroom. And so I wrote a book about that topic because I, as a teacher, was incredibly burnt out, and my students, as introverted students, the ones who were also incredibly burnt out. And so it was a topic that I started looking into years ago, and as I made the transition into full-time entrepreneurship, I realized it's incredibly powerful. It's an incredibly powerful conversation to have here as well. My initial thought in becoming a full-time entrepreneur was, hooray, I'm not in front of a bunch of students all day getting burnt out constantly. I'm going to have so much energy. But then I realized that being an entrepreneur who works from home actually has its own unique challenges to introversion or to extroversion, depending on which side of the spectrum you fall on.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Hope, glad you could make it.
Hello. Hey, Jess.
Hey, Jess. I don't know who else is. I saw like 4 people earlier, but I don't know what's going on. Anyway, yeah, it is true, and there are a lot of challenges around this for entrepreneurs. I think a lot of it is like you kind of if you are an introvert and you are working from home from your computer, you start to kind of realize like what are the limits of that introversion. When does it sort of become hermetism? Right? But when does it also serve you? Or like when do you actually feel like you've gotta get out there and surround yourself with people? And I know that like we've felt some nervousness around all the sort of IRL meetups that we've had with entrepreneurs going into it. And then it's like 3 minutes in, you're like, oh yeah, I'm home, I'm with my people, right? But I think a lot of times too, that introversion can keep us from taking those steps.
Hope I feel you. I've been a hermit these days too. And I think there's another side of the spectrum too. And you know, we're kind of focusing on introversion here for right now. We'll talk about the other side of things as well. But when you're at home all day, there's this idea that you're at home all day. So of course, if you're an introvert, you're building up your energy reserves. But if you're in meetings all day, that is not the case.
Oh my gosh. I know.
We're still recovering from a week of meetings.
Yeah.
Amazing meetings that we loved.
So dragging. Yes, they were awesome.
Yeah.
But it really did like demand energy from us, right? And so I think too, like I used to think that just like talking with somebody online would not be an energy suck for me. And it's not if I'm typing, but there's something crazy that happens in video, right? And so we've actually had to like take our booking software and like limit the number of meetings that we can have in a day, because not because our calendar can't handle it necessarily, but because we can, then we can't show up fully, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of being a leader is like putting the tools and the environment in place that does allow you to show up fully for yourself and for the people that you serve. But I think before we dig into this too far, I feel like we should define introversion and extroversion.
I was going to say that. Yeah. So for those of you who are new to this conversation, the sort of quick definition is it's all around energy. It's around how you gain and how you spend energy. So if you think of your energy reserves as a bank account, sometimes you're filling that bank account up, sometimes you're going out and spending it on things. And a lot of times you'll see this in regards to what we were just talking about, spending time with people. But it's not actually just people. It's a lot of different things. So for example, noise, things like bright colors and crowds, even if you're not a part of them. So kind of the classic example that I used to use when I was talking about this in a school setting is if you think of your high school, where you have lockers slamming, bright fluorescent lights, kids going up and down the hall, screaming at each other, sometimes throwing things, teachers yelling for the kids to get into the classroom or wherever they're supposed to be. That is like the high energy introverted nightmare right
Or like
there.
Las Vegas or something, right? No, I think part of this though is that like introversion is not the same thing as high sensitivity, like HSP, highly sensitive person, but they
Right.
often go hand in hand. So that what you're talking about there, the like sort of overstimulation, that's the sensitivity piece. It doesn't mean you're sensitive, like, oh, you hurt my feelings, like, which is fine. If your feelings get hurt, they're allowed to be hurt. But it's not the same thing. It's more like you're sensitive to what's coming at you through your senses.
Yeah, and it drains over time. So, being in a crowded coffee shop for an introvert after a while could get more draining than being at home and working, even if you're never talking to people.
Mm.
Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, and it is a spectrum, that's the other thing that I think is important to mention because you can be a little bit of both. You can fall in the middle. You're not just an introvert or an extrovert. You can be really far on one side, really far on the other, or somewhere in the middle. If you're further on the extrovert side, those ways that you fill up your energy bank are through those sorts of stimulation. So, that crowded coffee shop, regardless of whether you're talking to people or not, may actually be really, really uplifting and energizing and help you focus. And so, yeah,
Yes. Yes, Jess.
yeah. And so there's no right or wrong. And I think that's kind of what we want to lead with here is there's nothing wrong with being one or the other. And there's been a lot of conversation in the past 5 years or so around, introverts kind of reclaiming their power and saying, oh, well, just because I'm quiet, just because I prefer to be alone sometimes, just because I need to take a nap after I do something public, that doesn't mean I'm incapable, which is totally true and something we'll get into. But also, like, sometimes it turns into a little bit of extrovert bashing. And I don't want that to be the case either, because I think we both, extroverts, introverts, and the people who are in the middle, the ambiverts, we all have something to bring to the table, and we all can make really powerful leadership decisions and create powerful leadership platforms based on
Mm-hmm.
our strengths and leaning into
Yeah,
those strengths.
for sure. And I think what you're saying here too, Rochelle, about like the idea of 3 calls today isn't bad until it's with the wrong people, right? That can take you down so fast. Like, I think that can happen for introverts and extroverts, honestly. Like, we are all sensitive to other people's energy. We're sensitive to what happens around us. Some of us are just more so, right? And it kind of like
Mm-hmm.
it it's easier for us to kind of fall down into like a funk of our own
Yeah.
as a result of the outside stimulus. So I think step one is just like knowing yourself and knowing, what's good for you. Totally just, yeah, just hearing a low fan hum outside of you guys. Exactly. Like some white noise, just, if that works for you, like awesome. Some people, they feel stimulated in a positive way by being in a coffee shop. They feel enlivened, right? And they're like, okay, I'm going to get so much done today. This is awesome. And so it's just knowing yourself. And I think that's like key to everything that we talk about in this space, right? Is like the more you know yourself, the more you can take actions that are right for you, the more you can set up sort of the environment to be suited for your well-being. And by environment, I mean not just like your desk, but I mean like the type of business you run, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Jess, I was just listening to your summer rehash podcast last night, and I was like, yes, you're so right. Like the business model that we have could be totally a wrong fit for us, and it's just because like that's all we knew to do, or like that's what was working before, and like if that's not set up for our well-being, and if it's not complementary to our introversion or extroversion or wherever we're on that scale, but like also our values and whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna wear us down.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the first point that we want to talk about here is how to be an introverted leader without wearing yourself down. And I really think it does go back to this knowing yourself. I had a constant occurrence back in the days when I was giving these workshops on introversion in the classroom, where I would go to conferences and I would give these workshop trainings to usually groups of anywhere between 14 and 60 teachers. And the entire presentation would be around this topic and how to protect yourself if you were an introverted teacher, because teaching is such a high energy field. So essentially, how do you keep yourself from just wanting to curl up in a ball and just like die at the end of every day? Um, and how to extend that throughout a whole 9 month school year so that you aren't just like counting down the days to every Friday or every holiday. And at the end of every single workshop I gave, every single one, I probably gave 30 of them, 40, someone would come up to me and they would say, "That's awesome. This is all amazing. I don't believe you're an introvert, because if you were an introvert, you would not have been able to give this presentation." And to which I would respond, one, you weren't listening to me. Two, I am an introvert. I'm very, very highly an introvert. And the difference between me giving this presentation and someone who's very high on the extrovert side giving this presentation is the extrovert wants to go out to happy hour afterwards and cool off with some drinks with their friends, potentially. I want to go take a nap with my Harry Potter. That's pretty much it. I'm going to go curl up in my bed with a book and just not talk for a while.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, though, that I'm not capable of giving a presentation or public speaking or workshops. I actually love public speaking. I just need a break afterwards to recover.
Exactly. So I think a lot of it's just listening to your instinct, right? So like when you push yourself a little bit, and you find that you are in one of these situations that does require a high amount of social energy, just like pay attention to what you need and then do that thing, right? Like there may be some times where you can't for whatever reason. Maybe you're the guest of honor at an amazing conference and you've got to like be there for the happy hour because people paid VIP tickets for you to hang out with
Mm-hmm.
them. Like, okay, cool. But like at some point, make sure you carve out some time, even if it means like missing a really cool, talk the next day that you really wanted to go to or whatever. Like chances are, like you're going to be more present if you do take that time for yourself to recover. If you're totally like down to party afterwards, like cool, do that thing. You're going to be able to create those great relationships. And then at some point, like, yeah, make sure you do give yourself time to rest. Like I do think that it can actually almost backfire if we are so um like in one way the extroverts, I always feel a little jealous, right? Because I'm like, oh, you can go and like make the relationships and go do the happy hour and like meet all the people, and then like they show up the next morning like tired, right? Because they were like up so late having such a great time that like they didn't get to bed until whenever, right? So like whatever it is, like take care of yourself and your body and like know that like rest is a thing that you're going to need.
Mm-hmm.
But for the introvert, you're going to need it sooner. And it's okay. Like it's not a bad thing. And actually it means that you have time to like process what's going on and like don't think of it as a weakness, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if we're thinking of this in the context of leadership and our leadership framework, one of the pieces of that framework is influence, and that's your audience and how you communicate with your audience. So one of the things to pay attention to is what are your best ways to communicate with people in a way that fills you up. For example, we have this live stream show that we're doing right now. We do this every Wednesday, and we have a set time and a set time frame. We know this never goes more than, somewhere between 20 minutes and an hour. That's about how long this lasts. And we've set it up this way because prior to having this show, we would just hop on live randomly. And we got super resisty to it because these shows, as much as we love them, they are draining and we need time to recover afterwards. So knowing that we have this time blocked, we can mentally prepare for it, know what we're going to talk about, do the thing, and then come down from it by filling our cups in another way. Whereas if it's unscheduled for us, it doesn't actually help us, it hurts us. Someone else may be completely different. And it's not saying that all introverts need things scheduled and all extroverts are doing things spontaneously. That's not the case. Everyone is unique and different. And it really does come back to knowing yourself, especially when you're stepping into a leadership role, because once you get into that leadership role, people are going to be demanding more from you, more of your time, more of your energy, more answers, more conversations and discussions. So it becomes really important to know your boundaries.
Right. I think boundaries are key. And another like really amazing reminder from listening to your podcast episodes last night, Jess, was just like, you've got to put yourself first, whoever you are, right? Like it's so important. And I think so many of us are raised like not that way at all, right? That we are here to be hospitable. We're here to serve. We're here to, make our clients happy, whatever. Plus, then there's also this piece of like, well, I need to work harder and put in more time and be more present to build the audience or to, you know, have the effect that I want to have through my business. And it's not the case, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's actually a matter of taking care of yourself so that when you do show up, you're there fully, you're very present. You're there with, you know, your energy level that you're able to bring to the table that day and your focus. And then after that, like, cool, now go reward yourself with some, like, you know, a lunch
Mm-hmm.
or a walk around the block or whatever it is. So um yeah, you've got to take care of yourself first, which is so counterintuitive to so many of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about why the world needs both introverted and extroverted leaders, which is part of a larger conversation of the world needs as diverse of a leadership as
Yeah.
possible. And this is just one narrow area of diversity that we can talk about. Um, for a long time, there was sort of this, there's sort of this cultural idea, at least within the US culture, that gregariousness equals success. I don't think it was ever formally said, like, this is how you're successful, but just in typical corporate America, that's sort of the structure that ended up falling out. It's just, you know, people who are more gregarious tend to talk more, tend to ask for more sometimes, and therefore rise through the ranks more quickly. So there are a lot of extroverts in leadership, and that's really important. There's also a lot of introverts who are kind of coming into leadership, and that's also important. And I think, you know, I don't want to make broad generalizations because I think there's danger in that. And I think we all have different ways of approaching leadership. And I think one of the most important things that a leader can offer is a mirror to other people. And for me, when I first started seeing people who were coming out and talking about being introverts in roles that I identified with, I was like, oh, they're like me. So therefore, I can relate to them more. And then I feel more comfortable with their platform. I feel like I connect with them more and things like that. Whereas someone who has the same platform and is an extrovert, I may not necessarily, I might, but I may not necessarily connect with them as strongly on that point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely sort of been this extroverted ideal, right? Um, but at the end of the day, I truly believe that the role of a leader is to raise up and create other leaders, to empower other people to step into their leadership. And it
Mm,
takes that diversity to make that happen, right? Because like we're only going to connect with certain people. And yes, I freaking love your idea, Rochelle. Can I vote for a whole month of discussions on diversity and
yes.
thought leadership? I totally agree. That would be so amazing. And I do think this is a conversation that isn't happening. And yeah, it kind of goes back to the thing that we've all heard, right? Which is like your message matters and like the world needs you and like your story matters. And all of that is true, right? Like I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying it's not at all, but like it goes a little deeper than that, even, which is like your style of mentorship is needed and your style of leadership is needed. And if you're not equipped to step into that, then that means that the people that you can raise up are going to be sort of bereft, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think too, it's interesting. There's two sides of the same coin, right? There's you identify you identify with people who have similar traits with you in that sense. So like when I started hearing people talk about introversion in a leadership capacity, I was really relieved because I didn't at prior to that have a way to identify how I felt. I was just
Mm.
like, something is wrong with me. I'm tired all the time. I
Yeah.
didn't realize why it was happening. But the other side of the same coin, I love watching YouTube videos that are hosted by people who are very extroverted people and self-proclaimed extroverts because, and I love being around extroverts. It's just fun. And so I think um, it's about, yes, identifying yourself in certain leadership styles and being there for the people who need your mentorship style. And it's also about exposing yourself to that diversity so that you
Totally.
know that like your way is not the only way.
Yeah, right. Like I feel like okay, I'm gonna call out a dear friend who often watches these. So if you watch later, Lisa, hi. But like Lisa Carpenter is so amazing at like really helping me see where I'm hiding from my truth. And she does it through this like loving, no nonsense, like, here's the thing, I'm going to narrow in on it. And I'm like, ah, right. But like, it's good because it allows me to see the thing that I am avoiding. Um, and at the end of the day, like, not only has that been immensely helpful for me, B, it's like not my sort of native style, but I've learned how to like incorporate some pieces of
Mm-hmm.
that. And so, like, recently in our implementation program that we ran for the first half of this year, it's since ended. Like, that was a chance for me to actually kind of spread my wings a little bit and try some of that, to like try um, some sort of targeted like accountability, like, okay, but like, let's focus on this thing that you're avoiding in a loving way, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and to find like my own way of doing that. And I don't think that I would have like stepped into that with that much confidence if I hadn't seen it modeled in somebody that, like, A, I respect a crud ton. Is that a word?
It
It
is now.
sounded so weird as it came out of my mouth. Like, it's putting like five words in my mouth at one time. But also be like a style that like actually was effective for me, that like at this point, I don't know that it would have been before, but at this point, like, I also had the maturity to like receive that.
Yeah. So I think, the moral there is, as you are both stepping into your leadership platform and your leadership shoes and looking at the people you look up to as leaders, is really thinking about, is there diversity represented there in personality types, in, energy style, in a lot of different areas? What sort of diversity are you exposing yourself to so that you can be open to things that you may not have even recognized existed or you were capable of before?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, the uncontrollable giggles.
It's
And
fine.
hashtag crunch ton. I'm now useless. Okay.
so so I think, a lot of times the idea of leadership is scary in and of itself. Like, the word leader is
Mm-hmm.
scary. When you take into consideration this idea of, okay, I'm a leader, I'm stepping into the leadership platform that I want to build for myself. I want to create this positive momentum and change.
Yeah.
And I have a very specific personality that people are going to respond to in a certain way, sometimes
Right.
positively, sometimes maybe negative. And that's an opportunity for a lot of that imposter syndrome and fear and uncertainty and desire to step out of the spotlight to creep in. So I think it goes back to this idea of like really knowing yourself and being in tune with yourself and being confident in something internal as opposed to looking for those external validation pieces, because you're not going to rub everyone the right way. Sometimes people are going to not jive with you, and that's okay.
Right. I think another piece to sort of bring up around introversion, extroversion, like, again, these are like wild, sort of like broad categories here, which you may not fall into one perfectly. But one of the reasons why both are so powerful in developing leadership is that extroverts can sort of maintain a conversation with a lot of people simultaneously and like can really connect with a lot of people at one time. Like, you imagine going into a dinner party, like the extrovert may be like telling a funny story to the whole group, right? And like everyone's listening and laughing and having a great time. Whereas like the introvert is like sitting over here on the couch a little bit off to the side with like one or two other people having like this amazing heart to heart with them.
Or the
And
dog.
both, huh?
Or the
Or petting
dog.
the dog, having
Or they're with
amazing
the
heart to
dog.
heart with the dog. But right, but like they're both like really great ways of connecting with people and building relationships. Um, and one sort of, I guess my what I've seen before, and I could be wrong, like correct me on this, Jesse, but what I've seen before is that like when introverts, yeah, you can totally do public speaking and you can totally stand up in front of the room and tell a joke and like all of those things. But I think like the real magic and the place of like, this is easy for me comes
Mm-hmm.
with those small group things. And so it may be that that's like an opportunity for you to take a look at like how your business is mentoring people that allows you to really step into and play up your strengths. Whereas extroverts do the same thing, right? Like, figure out how you can play to your strengths, and like maybe like one-on-one consulting or something is just going to be like fine and you can do it, but like maybe it's easier for you to be like doing this through a live course or whatever it is. I also want to like make a point though that like it doesn't mean that introverts can't have scalable businesses. That's not true at all. Like introverts can absolutely do that, and it's just a matter of like remembering that, hey, that email that goes out through your funnel, just like remember, like write it like you're writing it to one particular person. Like pretend that every single person that's getting it is like that person you're sitting on the couch with at the dinner party, like really connecting with heart to heart. And that's, you know, it allows you to play to your strength while still having a sort of infinitely scalable business model.
Yeah, and I feel, and this is something I talked about in the capacity of education a lot, and I feel like it really translates to entrepreneurship and isn't talked about as much. There is a need to sometimes step out of that comfort zone too.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I talked about in the context of teaching was we can't do exclusively introverted or exclusively extroverted activities. We're going to have group work. We're going to have solo time. And that's going to be uncomfortable for the people who are on the opposite side of the spectrum. And that's okay. When I was right after teaching, the job I got immediately after that, the last job I had before I went full-time with the business, it was a sales job. I was selling field trips to a museum. And when I took that job, a little piece inside of me was just like, oh, this is going to be terrible, because you have to basically do door-to-door sales. It was at schools, but it was the same idea of like, I'm walking into a building, I have to talk to a complete stranger, and I have to sell a thing to them, a field trip to them. Luckily, it was a field trip to a dinosaur museum, so it's like, okay, at least I'm selling something cool. But it was horrifying. And then we would have these big events, these galas, where my only job was to walk around and make small talk and network, and so that I could sell people on field trips. And as someone who is as introverted as I was, it was horrifying, and that's exactly why I took the job. Because I wanted to do that thing that was horrifying to me, partially to prove that I could, but also so that it wasn't as horrifying. And that's where we get back to that hermit conversation from the very beginning of this, which is, yes, you can lean into your strengths, and yes, you can take care of yourself, but don't do it to the point where you're limiting yourself. You know where your comfort zone is and know where you can stretch it a little bit.
Right. It's the idea of like being honest with yourself to discover like, am I using this as an excuse to not grow? But at the end of the day, like we're not saying self-care and playing to your strengths or not, or like no-nos. We're not saying that at all. Like at all. Like that is absolutely not what we're saying. But yeah, don't leverage it as an excuse, right? Like I remember a conversation, well, this isn't actually super relevant. Never mind. But it was like an example, right, of me using something that I thought was like a virtue as an excuse for something that I didn't want to like deal with, right? And so like even those things that like are helpful and are good and important, sometimes we can kind of like hide behind them a little bit. So just be honest with yourself about why you're doing the thing. Like, do I need this nap right now because I'm like energetically drained, or do I need this nap right now because I just like really don't want to do that Facebook
Live? Or both.
Right.
Yeah, and then just make informed decisions, and there's no wrong decision necessarily. It's just being aware and paying attention to yourself and making the best decision you can in each situation. Which leads us, Marie already started talking about this a little bit, but it leads us to our last point, which is how to use introversion or extroversion to guide your messaging. So Marie mentioned, your programs. It makes sense to create programs that cater towards your energy level, because hopefully you're spending a good amount of time within your programs doing something. And so you want that time to be time well spent, and time that's going to be as energetically fulfilling as possible, whether it's an automated funnel or a group program that requires a lot of high touch energy. But even backing up from the paying options you have within your business, your messaging as a whole, the public facing content, you can gear towards your energy levels. So if you really love certain types of content, if they really fill you up, lean into that. It's so much easier to do that than it is to try and do what the new hot thing is for creating content if it doesn't fit with how you are creatively empowered.
Right. Like at the end of the day, people recognize the longevity of effort more than they recognize being on the new platform. We've definitely talked about this before, where like we've actually been hired before by people who were like, I don't know you, but like you've been doing this same thing for a while. So like I trust that you know what you're doing and your business would
Yeah.
have collapsed by now if you didn't, which is kind of amazing actually. But I think part of it is because like we've set up our messaging and our content in a way that like at this point finally allows us to be out there and to show up fully and to take care of ourselves. And
Hmm.
like, not gonna lie, part of that is because we have help. We have like the help of a team, and we decided like, okay, this is worth investing in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of the messaging piece too is it's that transparency, that showing your work.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, introversion is not a part of our leadership platform as, as like a forward-facing piece, but that doesn't mean it's not something we talk about frequently. We all often make even offhanded comments about being introverts, and that transparency lets people who are in similar situations know that they can relate to us, but also just like humanizes us a little bit. And we're not just this forward facing message that's getting put out to the world. We are people who have, needs beyond just our Facebook Live time or our client time. We need to go and read Harry Potter or go for a walk in nature or just sit quietly with a cup of coffee. Like there are these needs that we have that when we pull back the curtain and share them with people, it allows the forward-facing, more refined message to take on more weight and to be even more relatable because we've shown the behind the scenes of who we are.
Exactly. So I don't know if I can really even add any more to that, but just to kind of sum it up in terms of displaying your sort of social energy tendencies within your messaging, play to your strengths, which means you have to know what they are. Allow yourself to push yourself a little bit out of that comfort zone, because then you'll have a bigger comfort zone. Beyond that, it's a matter of setting up your content in a way that really does allow you to show up fully, even if that means getting some support and help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, if you happen to be a more structured person, structure your day or your week or your quarter around those, energy spikes and dips. So we mentioned we had a really meeting heavy week last week that we're still recovering from. We blocked off our calendar this entire week. We're just no meetings this week. It's not happening. And we did that intentionally because we knew that if we had a meeting this week, we would not be able to bring our full selves to the table. And the conversation would suffer as a result. So we're allowing ourselves a full week of just working on our internal client work, working on our internal, our business work, working on
Mm-hmm.
other projects just to recover. And, if we were on the other side of the spectrum, we may have a different recovery method, but I think it really just comes to that awareness. And so if there's anything you can take away from this live stream, I would say it's just to tune into yourself and start taking note of when you feel tired and when you feel really energized, and with no judgment and no like, oh, this means I'm an extrovert, or oh, this means I'm an introvert. It's not necessarily about the labels that we apply. It's about just the understanding of what fills you up, what drains you, so that you can start to engineer your life around those moments in ways that really allow you to grow as a leader.
Totally. And I think, the labels with this and everything, they're just tools. I mean, we don't have to attach meaning to them. This is like when I got my depression diagnosis. It's like, it actually felt super empowering to have a word for it. I know that, like, for you, Jesse, it felt very empowering to have, like, the word introvert in your vocabulary, because now you're like, oh, good. It's not like there's something wrong with me. Like, this
Yeah.
is like a thing and it's a trait and it's totally normal. So, if it helps you and it feels empowering, like, just that gives you a word in your vocabulary to be able to like talk to other people about it, or like Google like, oh gosh, introversion, social situation recovery ideas, whatever it is, right? Like,
Totally.
so yeah, it's again, no judgment. I love that you said that, Jesse.
Yeah, I think it's important because we do tend to categorize ourselves really quickly and
Mm-hmm.
other people. I remember when this is another Lisa Carpenter story. I remember my very, very first conversation with Lisa. I mentioned immediately off the back, I'm an INTJ, like Myers-Briggs. That's my thing, and therefore I do this, 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 and this. And she was just like, let's talk about that. I was like, shit. She
Now
called me out
looking back
immediately.
on that, I'm like, that's hilarious.
I know. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. No
Oh
idea.
man.
But it's true. Prior to that conversation, I had created this box around who I
Oh,
was, what my
me too.
personality was, and that box was rigid. There was no way out of it. And it took someone else coming in and being like, let's actually look at this and look at how you've created the box. You've used the label to create the box for yourself, and now you're living in the box, and it's like it's a box of air. It's not actually a real box. You just
Yeah.
created it. And that's true of any label. So if you're running around waving the introvert flag or waving the extrovert flag, that's great and lean into it. Just don't let it become a box.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That isn't there, right?
Yeah.
So awesome. So I think that kind of wraps up our discussion of introverted and extroverted leadership. But before we go, we wanted to do just a little bit of housekeeping around this program, the Leadership Forum live stream, and just let you guys know what's coming for this.
Yes. So we just started our Leader Up membership community yesterday. It was the official kickoff day, which is super exciting and means that our energy is shifting to making sure that we are taking care of that community of leaders who are stepping into their leadership platform. And because we want to make sure that we're giving people in that community our full attention and our full support as they are on their journeys, we are shifting things a little bit within this free group. And we're not going anywhere. We're not leaving this. The group is staying open, and we will still be here supporting you guys. And we'll still be having these leadership forums, but instead of doing it every week, we're going to be backing off a little. You may have noticed we sort of quietly ended our roundtables. We were doing those Zoom calls once a month, and last month we did not do one. We sort of shifted out of it, and part of the reason for that was we were shifting into the challenge and the launch, and then we really wanted to make sure that that was something available to people within the membership community. So there are no more roundtables, and these leadership forum discussions are going to be backing off a little bit. So instead of every week, we're going to be doing them 2 times a month. So every other week. Just like before, we'll always post an event in the events tab of this group, and we'll always send an email out. So if you're not on our email list, let us know. We can get you on there so you get the email reminders, or you can just keep an eye on the group because we'll post the week of a leadership forum. We'll post what the topic is on Monday. We'll let you know. It'll be the theme the whole week within the group so that we can talk about it. And yeah, we'll be coming live twice a week. And on the off weeks, we'll be having other discussions. We just won't be coming in here to do the live stream because we're managing our energy levels.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And again, if you're not on our email list, we have like a pretty epic Feature Friday email coming out this Friday
We
where,
do.
yeah, we talk a little bit about what's going on in our business, but we're also talking up what's going on for some of our clients and what's going on for some of our friends and peers, and some of the folks who've actually been on this call are being featured. Not that we've told you that. So it's a surprise. So if you need access to that, let us know and we can get you on there. But probably the fastest way to do that is just to make sure you've signed our Thought Leadership Manifesto, which you can
Yeah, and
find
if
in the
you,
About.
yes, and if you want to have these conversations on a weekly basis, if you want to dig deeper into leadership, if you want to really take ownership of your own leadership platform and have a safe space to do that, the Leader Up community is closed right now, but there is a wait list, and we'll put the wait list in the comments. You can go ahead and sign up for that, and you will be among the first to know when we're getting ready to open the cart again. And you may even get special early access or something like that. So if you want to be the first to know when we are planning to open the cart again, go ahead and sign up for that wait list and you'll be on the list.
Mm-hmm. And we do have a special prize waiting for one lucky winner who joins the wait list and then does join the Leader Up community once we do open that. So not saying what it is, but we're excited.
Yes, so stay tuned. We'll poke the link in the comments. It is northstarmessaging.com/leader-up, and you can just sign up right there. All right, I think that's
Exactly.
everything.
Yep. Okay, well, you guys have a great rest of your week. Give us a shout. Let us know sort of where you are in this conversation. If you want feedback, or I really like your comment here, Rochelle. That may be my problem. I'm trying to make a box, right? So like, let us know, sort of where you are on this journey. We're happy to chat about it with you guys. This is like one of our favorite topics ever, and can't wait to hear from you and to support you as you continue all growing as very self-aware, self-loving introvert, or not introverts, leaders, maybe introverted leaders.
Introverted and extroverted leaders.
Exactly. All right. Have a great one, guys.
All right.